the Voice of Retail podcast. My name is Michael LeBlanc, and I am your host. This podcast is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Meet Kelly Mawhinney, partner at Mercer, recorded together live on the main stage recently at the RCC Retail HR conference. In a wide-ranging and fact-based plus experience-based conversation, we'll learn how retailers and HR professionals from other industries are navigating the roadblocks of talent acquisition, the varied needs of in-store and hybrid team members, and the expectations of a values-driven workforce.
Today we have special guest Kelly Mawhinney, partner with Mercer, to chat about Ghostbusting strategies for talent acquisition with the Voice of Retail podcast host Michael LeBlanc. Please welcome to the stage Michael and Kelly.
The structure today is we're going to get an assessment from Kelly about the state of the nation, so to speak, where we are, a bit of data. Then we're going to talk about what's working both at table stakes, so what works for everyone. Then we're going to kind of dive down into what works for in-store staff and warehouse, and then office support, head office support, and then some general advice. But first, I had a question for you. So we could read your impressive background, obviously very accomplished in your field. Most of the people here would know of Mercer, of course, but tell us something we don't know or might surprise us about you or Mercer.
It's a fairly unknown fact that I went diving early on in my life, and I really wanted to see a shark, and I was diving in the Turks and Caicos, and the dive instructor who was with me, because I was a newbie, said, yeah, you're not going to see a shark in these waters. Not a chance. And I went out on a boat with all these geared up guys. They had knives, they had all their gear. It was all guys. And then me, who was all like, ah. And we got in the water and we went down, and a 9-foot tiger shark went right by. And I was so excited, so blown away. And we got back to the boat. The guys were all like, oh my God, I've never seen that. It's so cool. And I was like, I brought the shark. Yeah. I manifested this shark.
You bring the sharks.
Yeah, I bring the sharks.
What a great way to start. Well, so you're gonna present us some slides. Now, what we wanted to establish was a bit. Oh, there they are. Your slides are ready. So let's take a look at those for about 10 minutes, and we're going to chit and chat about them.
Yeah. So, folks, I wanted to give you this, which is hot off the presses, and something that our clients, frankly, pay quite a bit to be a part of. This is global HR trends, and we've boiled it down to have a strong Canadian view, and there's absolutely a lens that all of you can look through to see it from a retail perspective. So please, we'll have all this information, and then Michael and I will chat. So this is just giving you the lay of the land in terms of the industries who were surveyed, the organization type, the org type. You'll see that retail is the 8% in there, so 8% of respondents were from the retail sector. Not a lot, but this is a global survey, so there's many, many numbers behind that 8%. So here's where we're at with the state of the nation for HR in Canada. So we're really still focusing on upholding diversity, equity, and inclusion. How many folks are into that as part of their career right now? I know if you're in HR, but some folks who have a very strong focus. That's great. So it's still clearly on the dial, and we'll find out sort of where we're at with that. Focusing on company culture development, so culture, so many of us moved from being HR to being people and culture in our titles at least, and we're working really hard at bringing culture along, though I will say I think it's lagging quite a bit relative to the people management pieces that we do, and that's usually just because we don't have a lot of bandwidth. Impacting total well-being. Well-being stays on the map. Many of you have built out well-being capabilities in your organizations. That's, again, still in its infancy, really. And enabling new ways of working. So we talk about it constantly. I speak every month, and we've talked about RTO and flex work pretty much at every conference, and everything to do with acquisition and turnover. So this is our top of mind. And enabling a skills-based organization. So this is where we get into that upskilling, reskilling, folks traveling along with their kit bag of capability, almost as if they were doing gig in a gig economy, but they're doing it inside your organizations. So whole lot of stuff here, but I'll look top line and say improving the employee experience is top of mind. And so I'm probably going to reference the employee experience a lot. And for me, when I talk about the employee experience, it's that very individualistic, very flexible bag that each employee carries along with him, full of his or her stuff that matter to him or her. So that's what we're looking at there. And then we're looking at, strategic workforce planning. That's been on our dial for quite a bit of time. But again, we think we're still trying to get to the strategic part of workforce planning. So those are some top of minds. And then I'll look to designing talent processes around skills, and then rethinking comp philosophy. So touch on comp for just a second. So at Mercer, in my career domain, where I'm the partner for that line of business, we have a very strong focus on compensation. And as you folks know, compensation's got a big focal point on it right now. So any of us who are looking for comp personnel are having a hard time. So they're a specialized group of HR professionals. They always have been. The demand for them now is through the roof. So everybody's out there trying to fix the equation of the employee value proposition. What are they going to do first? They're going to try to do something with compensation and rewards. So that's been a big factor in what we do in the workplace. We do a lot of workforce and executive compensation work. So I'm just going to motor along because we'll run out of time. Yeah. So this is more information. We're trying to, there's things like, and it gets kind of consultant-y, I find, in some of the words, but resetting for relevance. So, but this is all employee-centric. It's meant to be. So the notion of, for instance, working in partnership. So this is the two sides of the coin of the employee-employer. Now, we've talked about it forever and a decade, and it's tended to be employer-driven. But you know now, with the turnover issues that we're facing, attraction and retention, that partnership equation of, who's first in the relationship sort of thing has shifted. So that dynamic has more parity now. We're not there yet. Employees are still, catering to the employer because they get paid to do so. But they absolutely have more power and control than they have ever had. But there's a long way to go. Yeah. So I want you guys to see sort of what's going on in terms of, these stats. It's interesting information. So 79% of companies in Canada say they have a living wage. 21% of organizations have adjusted compensation, so all employees have a living wage. You're going to see a lot of this. It's like, we're saying this, we're doing this, yes, it's on our mandate, but you're going to find that our progress is not great. And this is across all industries and all organizations. 69% offer flex work options. 75% have no plans to provide job security for gig workers. So yes, flexibility, no, not really. So there's a lot of push me, pull. 88% deliver minimum standard of health care for all employees in all locations, but total well-being initiatives are less than 72%. You're going to see a theme along these lines. And I think for all of you, because you're HR practitioners for the most part here, you're going to realize why you keep having this sort of overwhelming cognitive dissonance in your work, because it's this kind of push-pull that we're all dealing with. So 74% of the firms have said, yes, we're reset, we're working in partnership with our employees. But when you look at the data of what's really happening, you have very low numbers of actual take-up. So 34% ensuring the responsibility of DE&I at an individual and team level. 27% setting new work guidelines and improving collaboration. So the levers that need to be leveraged are not. So there's lots of hopes, but not a lot of action. Or certainly not felt action. Again, more, I think, meaningful stats. Flexibility, which we're going to talk about a lot. Flexibility, 33% are better supporting the benefits needs of their mobile workforce. And I would, so again, we've got a lot of remote going on, a lot of RTO, a lot of challenges there. Only 33% of the surveyed population globally are supporting that. Affordable health care, and we feel it in Canada every day as a citizen about, dental's not covered and derm's not covered, dermatology, whatever, all those things are. I know all our friends talk about these things, as do our employees. 18%, only 18% are investing in new health and risk protection programs. So we're talking about risk these days a lot more as it pertains to people risk. And what I love about that for HR personnel, we've really gotten on the map in terms of business, because people actually, for a change, want to, I shouldn't slag it, but they want to know more about what we think and what we do than they ever have, i.e. the other business leaders. We always wanted to be at the strategic table.
Now you're there.
We're there.
It's a lot like, it reminds me of during the COVID era, pre-COVID era, not many people were talking about supply chain professionals, what supply chain people did. Now that's simmered down. Now everybody's talking about people, and you might find yourselves in those discussions. So let's pivot off some of the data that you've
Sure, absolutely. Do you want to go off this?
Yeah, you can leave that up if you want.
Sure.
It's great stuff to talk about, and maybe there's another slide that we might reference
Sure.
later on. So I wanted to start with a kind of a understanding. So you've set the table quite well, and continuing the metaphor, I want to understand what's table stakes versus differentiators for all functions within retail organizations. So whether they're working in the store, whether they're working in office support, no matter what they're doing. I mean, I see compensation come up a lot. It's probably something that everybody has to agree on. What are the kind of other, we talked about employee branding, for example, that the company needs to have a mission and feel like they're doing, are these kind of table stakes? And then we'll kind of get into what's different for the different constituencies.
The cool thing and the challenging thing that's going on right now is a lot are table stakes. So things that we're lagging on and have been talking about for 10 plus years are sort of all coming to the table. So I've got clients, for instance, very notable ones in the public sector who, most of them have a unionized environment in some aspect, and they have compression on senior roles, compensation, and different things. And so as we travel along in any of those, in retail as well, as we look at that, we absolutely have to look at flexibility. So we need to look at everything that we can put together in an employee value proposition that will be their choice. I want choice, I want portability, I want flexibility. And this may not sound like new news. The new news is, if you don't do it, I'm going to leave, right? I have choices. And I know from an employee brand standpoint, I've learned over the last 10 or so years how to establish my brand. I know how to do that. I know how to market myself. I know how to reach out on LinkedIn and other vehicles to get new roles. There's just an abundance of ways that a person can take their kit bag and travel on down the road. Even the fact of people going to other organizations that used to have stigma. You can go, but we'll never have you back. Those were rules for some big corporations, that if you ever leave us, we'll never have you back. We have in our organization boomerangs, and it's a proud thing that people boomerang and come back to the organization. We send people off, and then we're saying, hey, come on back. And I certainly know in my Holtz experience in the HR role, again, creating that sense of brand and personal, and understanding how to market your company brand as well as part of your personal brand.
Where does ideas like ESG fit in? Not ideas, but concepts and strategies around ESG. Is it important at the table stakes level? Can you be an employer of choice without it as a general? Without it, but you know what I mean? Like not have this culture that kind of talks about it that much.
I'd say it's more of an emerging consideration now, as much as when we look at ESG, and it was on our chart, where it fit into the ethos, and it was definitely there. But I think, and based on my experience with Holtz, it's absolutely there, and folks are building out on it. But I think it's in an earlier phase if I can say that, then things to do with well-being, and then things in our HR kit bag, things to do with well-being, things to do with diversity, and they're linked, of course. Yes. But I think that's part of it. The linkages have not necessarily been made. That's where it is, and it's well-being standing alone, diversity standing alone, ESG is standing alone, and we're trying to further them, but we're still in silos, even in HR. And sometimes ESG obviously is not all in the HR platform.
Nor should it be, right?
Exactly.
So you would see these linkages more starting to form now, more to become an employer of choice. That's what is helping frame the discussion. Let's talk about we came up with this idea of ghostbusting. I heard it from a bunch of you and retailers about is that a real thing? I hear it anecdotally. Often is in your practice. Are you hearing it often? I was reading I think it was a big pizza company was offering a free pizza just to show up for an interview. And because they,
Yeah. How many people in the room are involved in TA? In anyone, recruitment, TA? Yeah. So we feel for you. I know what you're going through, and certainly we leaders who are involved trying to staff and stabilize our groups where there's just constant churn going on right now. And TA folks are just in an endless sort of round of hiring at all levels, whether it's from, stores, warehouses, to head office. And in terms of ghostbusting, what I was saying earlier between us is it's kind of we're getting our comeuppance. So it used to be that employers were felt to be, ghosting employees, prospective employees, not answering us, not giving us, an opportunity, demanding, too much, too many certifications and through the moon. And then things started to shift because of the talent shortage, in part, where firms started to say, well, no, we don't need that degree, or we don't need that certification. So it's really a demand and supply component, and that has shifted. And so the ghost busting is they've learned bad behavior in part from us, frankly. So there's, we weren't necessarily, in any of our industries, providing employees with the best service. And I don't mean to press on TA people at all, but we weren't necessarily, and we weren't frankly set up to give them the best service or respond to everyone or whatever that all looked like. So now it's the shoes are on the employees' feet for, walking where they want to walk. And so somehow to go forward then, we need to inculcate that partnership, human-centric, and that language is going to come up more and more, relationship in all of our organizations. And also we can't be striated the way that we are. So we can't have, ivory tower folks over there and store folks over here. All of you will have somebody who heads up stores and someone who heads up a warehousing and distribution. So all of those individuals need to come to the table. And also there's a huge role here too for CEOs. I think that there needs to be an evolution for the CEO roles, because they tend to sit so remotely and they tend to focus on, I'm a digital guy, I'm a fashion guy, I'm a product guy, but we're not seeing the connection across all of these organizations to provide them their due. And so that comes up with, looking at things like how do we satisfy stores or warehouses or fulfillment places to have any kind of hybrid or have any kind of...
So it really boils down in those realms with flexibility more than hybrid. But you've opened the door, so let's talk about hybrid a little bit. There's a very boisterous conversation going on almost daily. Some of you may have a blend. You read in the paper, some organizations are demanding or threatening their employees to come back to work. Others are trying to entice them with cappuccino machines or whatever. As you think about that, there's talk of the 4-day week. As you put that in a frame for us, how much of that, first of all, I guess the question is, do you see that as a sustainable, ongoing trend? We didn't talk about the data that this is probably could be for many, many years. So where do we sit in terms of organizations being an employer of choice offering flexibility? It's not for everybody. Again, we're talking more about store support. How do you see that? What's your lens that you look at that through?
So hybrid's here to stay. Remote work is here to stay. employees are not going to come back easily, and if they do come back, they're going to use their time wisely to go somewhere else that isn't demanding that of them. In terms of people who need to be in physical locations to do their jobs, that we absolutely, and I was working with a client in this regard who's head of stores and looking at, well, what can we do for store personnel? Well, we actually have some other data with respect to hiring and attraction and retention. And we need to be creative with what those personnel have in terms of their hours, their time, their choices. So they may end up, building a block of time that they're going to go to the organization and do their work in the way they want to. So that's going to bring complexity to anybody in physical locations where people need to be. You're going to need to accommodate them. So yes, they need to be there sometimes, but then there's going to be compression of their work, or there's going to be elements that you need to split out from their work that could be hybrid. It's going to be complex and more work to be done.
To layer on that complexity, in your practice, are you worried about researching, for younger associates, younger people getting started, the mentorship, the camaraderie, the just being part of a culture?
Yeah.
I feel like that there's a risk there. How do you think about that, and that trade-off between I want to go in and be part of something, and I want to learn and I want to be present versus flexibility? How are people making those trade-offs, and what advice can you give to everyone about having that conversation?
So there's interesting complexity here to your point. We've done studies for clients that came to us and said, we're sure our productivity is falling by people not being here, and we're sure in that productivity there's a lack of engagement and a lack of culture and all of these things. When we put the data together, the stats don't support that. So we need to have a mindset shift around.
So just so I can put a point to that.
Yes,
so,
please.
When you talk productivity, when I talk to executives during COVID, on a scale of 1 to 10, they were at an 8 to a 9 around their confidence and productivity. Has that gone down, or is there still productivity? Is your research still showing that productivity is fine?
Productivity is fine. And I think
it's adherence to the culture and to the
business?
So
I think there's a lot of confusion in terms of how do we deal with the fact that we have all these towers that we've leased or bought that we can't put bums in seats. Well, hey, the bums in seats don't take your costs down, right? But we also know that we share with all of the other employers who support these businesses who now have no business, restaurants, little shops, all that sort of thing. So the whole organizational machine, if you will, is shifting to try to understand what do we do with this. It's really not different in stores, because in many places the uptake in online shopping is changing the nature of how people coming into stores looks like,
and the nature of the role for associates in many stores. I want to ask you one question about. There's always this anecdotal conversation around we're missing that water cooler talk, that innovation, that bright ideas. I've never seen any academic research that supports that actually happens. But it is, and we're talking about a very conventional workplace, because a lot of employers are like, let's do more offsites, let's do more different things. Have you seen, and what are your thoughts on this kind of innovation gap that may be perceived or may be real?
Somebody said something perfect to me. I was at a speaking engagement last month, and another speaker said, I have culture. It's in my home. I have my culture. I have my meetings. I have my, water. I have my coffee. I have all the culture. I have my music. So there's a shift in what people perceive as their office culture, and that's where I was going. There's already a shift in how people consider culture. So do they need to get together to have that? And we would argue that you don't. So when you look at who's coming in, who's not coming in, and then for groups that have never had that wholesale opportunity that have all come back, everyone is questioning whether that actually adds value to their life. So if they strip out the annoyances of the expense of coming to the office, the commute, all the crap, if they strip that out, would you still want to be there with everybody if it was just like your home and you just rolled out of bed and went to... No. They're not seeing that as a value add, particularly in terms of a culture, engagement, belonging. They have that in Zoom. They have that in the one day a week they go into the office. They have that in the stores for the 3 days that they may work full time in the future, however that's going to look.
It's so interesting. I think we're early days in the overall, like we're early innings, to use a sports metaphor, in understanding this. Because I think there's merit, as I said, for the younger executives, younger associates to just kind of learn from different. It's a little hard to learn over Zoom.
Yeah.
We'd say, so we're just trying to all figure it out. I'd love to hear your feedback.
Yeah.
Everyone here, I'm sure you're all thinking about it. Let's get back to Ghostbusting for a sec. So you've helped us establish it happens. Is there any best practices about, we see it, I see it at 3 levels, right? Don't show up at the interview, don't show up at the job. And I've even heard of people just leaving the job and not even saying that I'm leaving the job, and then they disappear. So let's assume that it's happening. Like, if I'm the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and you're one of the Ghostbusters, what are the solutions for those kind of things?
So heavy burden on recruitment right now. You guys know it. You're feeling it. Heavy burden on TA and all folks in that arena, because it is a tough time. You really have to look at your recruitment hygiene. You have to look at everything in your life cycle, from attraction, so in your brand, in attraction, things like Glassdoor. Make sure that it's clean. Make sure that you've got something proactive there. You may not know how many people actually go online to see what people think of your brand, of who you are, of the CEO. There's a lot going on. People are much more aware and savvy about what they're getting into and what they can use it for. People are way up on the what's in it for me factor. So people who may not have been so much in the last few decades absolutely are now, and we are also teaching them to be so. So you absolutely have to have good attraction, and you need to take a look at what is your employee value proposition. So it has to be made up of the things they actually want. So, and that has to be communicated to them in a way that is compelling. So you can't just be blasé about, here we have some stuff, or here we're a good company. You really have to do a lot of work to market, to reach out, to enlist, and timing. We all know the timing of the cycles are way too long. I got into the gig I'm in right now, and it was like, you guys are killing people. There's no way we're going to hire anyone when you think we're going to do this panel and this test and this panel and this. No, it's going to be this panel, a test, and it's all going to be compressed into. And so you've got to train your internal clients who are hiring in so many ways. You've got to get them to streamline. These are the 3 things I must have. That's it. Get it clear. Get them to get clear. You've got these internal clients who are, not narrowing down what they need. They have to. And then they have to follow a game plan, and you have to inform them what the game plan's going to be. You guys are in a leadership role much more than you ever were before. It's not order taking 101 any longer. It's absolutely, I'm a professional and I can do this for you. And we know in most of our firms, we're using external recruiters less and less. At many of the jobs outside, even at the junior executive level, where people are doing it themselves. So there's so much of a burden on TA right now. You really have to get your processes streamlined. You really have to market yourselves, and you really have to be proactive and get bums in seats quickly. But to your point, there's more to it. It's complex still. You get their bum in seat, and then they're like, I don't really like this job.
And it probably you would agree that there is some time in this very agile, changing environment that outside talent, outside resource talent, the recruiters of the world can bring a lot of expertise in terms of what's happening today for executives. Now, we got 1 minute left. 2 starts that people should start doing. Sum it all up for us in a minute. 2 things they should start doing today to be successful and be the employer of choice. What would they be?
So you absolutely need to influence what the employee value proposition is going to be. And you need to understand what your company's is. So there's everything going on out there, is certainly from a comp and rewards basis, that is sort of the ultimate piece in that employee value proposition. Nobody works to not get paid. So everything in there has to be flexible, meaningful, competitive. You really have to know your categories of jobs. You need to do your job architecture. You need to know who's on first, and it's dynamic. So it's a lot of work right now, but you really need to understand what are our top jobs. And nobody go out, and none of this, we all need the best talent. You don't. Find out what talent you need at what levels and so on. Again, more job architecture. Understand your environment so that you can narrow it down and carry on. Stop doing, that's kind of it. Don't be this big, be this small. Be very focused. I need to hire ABC, and this is what I'm going after. This is what my must-have. And drive your internal clients to get on point.
All right, wise advice. Lots of data. We threw a lot of data at you. I hope you appreciate and absorb some of that. Now, where can we get in touch with you on LinkedIn? You're a LinkedIn person.
Yes, absolutely. So if you do Kelly Mawhinney, it shows up as Kelly Elizabeth Mawhinney, and I'm the top person you'll find for LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thanks so much for being on the panel. Let's hear it for Mercer. Kelly, thanks
very much.
All right.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, be sure and follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure to check out my other retail industry media properties, Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis, and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. Last but not least, if you're into barbecue, check out my YouTube barbecue show, Last Request Barbecue, with new episodes each and every week. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, Consumer Growth Consultant, President of Emmy LeBlanc & Company, Inc., Maven Media, and keynote speaker. If you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at meleblanc.co. Safe travels, everyone.